Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. I am just in the middle of filming my bookshelf tour. And oh my god, it's taking quite a while to do. I'd always seen booktubers talking about doing their bookshelf tour and like what an absolute odyssey it has been for them to do and how stressful it was, and I've always been like, how stressful can it be? You're just like filming yourself, taking the books down, showing a cover, putting it back. How hard can that be? And yeah, it's a lot. So I'm kind of taking a break to film a different video now instead, and I'm going to do the mid-year book freakout tag, which everybody and their mum's been doing right now. Basically taking stock of how the reading year has been going so far, if we're on track. So far this year I've had a pretty good reading year. I have read 72 books, which I think is probably the most I've ever read at this point in the middle of the year. I've been trying to read like more and more every year that goes by, and I think I'm definitely on track for it, so I'm pretty pleased with how things have been going. I think lockdown has done a lot to help me with my reading though, so I don't know how it would be if it had been an absolutely normal year, but you know, I'm happy. We'll see how we go. I mean, not happy with the circumstances of how we've had to be in lockdown, but for reading it's been very, very good. So the first question on the mid-year book freakout tag is best book that you've read so far in 2020, and for me, I think it's definitely been The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. The Other Bennet Sister is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but from the perspective of the middle child, Mary Bennet. Mary in Pride and Prejudice was depicted as being, you know, the plain child, the only one of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet's daughters who wasn't beautiful. She's known for being very bookish and quite sanctimonious and not being very charming, but in The Other Bennet Sister, we get to see things from her point of view. We are shown her perspective on the events of Pride and Prejudice, but then it goes further on after the initial timeline, and we see what happens to her after, mild spoiler, after Mr. Bennet dies. How Mary's future unfurls after the death of Mr. Bennet, when she and the rest of her family have all been scattered. This was probably my most anticipated book of 2020. But I was still, you know, you're always a little bit worried that you're not going to like something as much as you think that you will. But oh my god, I love this book. I just found it so heartwarming. And it is quite a chunky book. It's around about 600, 700 pages. Let me check. It is 655 pages, but I am definitely the kind of person that if I am loving a book, I don't care how long it is. I never think that it's dragged out. I always just want more and more, and that was definitely the case with this book. I just savoured every single page. I just felt such a kinship and just such sympathy for Mary and the way that her family and the people around her have treated her all of her life, and was just like cheering her on the entire book. In The Other Bennet Sister, we grow to see Mary Bennet not as this, you know, very studious, sanctimonious, you know, stick in the mud who isn't very fun, but somebody who is really passionate about the things that she studies and the things that she cares about. And it's so lovely to see throughout the book people start to appreciate her. She might not be the typical, you know, beautiful, charming Jane Austen heroine, but there is such a spark in her, and people do eventually come to appreciate her for what she brings. And it was just so lovely to read and to see that story unfurl and to have Mary Bennet get her due at last. I really, really love this, and I do recommend that you read this. I really do. Question number 2 is the best sequel that you've read so far in 2020, and no surprises if you have seen my video on this series, but I think it would have to be The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. As you'll probably know, I read the entire Thomas Cromwell trilogy this year and absolutely loved it. I will link my video review about the series, but I love this. I thought it was brilliant. I really, really hope that Hilary Mantel is nominated for the Booker Prize. I'm hoping she wins. I don't know how she can not, but we'll have to see what's on the list. But I love this, and you should definitely pick up this trilogy and have a look at what all the hype's about. Question number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but really want to. And you know, there are quite a few things that have come out in the last 6 months that I haven't gotten around to yet, but I really, really want to. I think the main one that comes to mind for me is A Curious History of Sex by Kate Lister. As we know, I'm a big fan of a history book, and one of my modules that I actually took in my 3rd year of university was a comparative history of sexualities, and basically just charting all sorts of different attitudes towards sex, from like sexual practice to sexual orientation to sex work, reproductive laws, media depictions of sex and like erotic imagery. And it was honestly one of my favourite modules that I did during university. It was so, so interesting. A book I actually have on this subject is The Origins of Sex The History of the First Sexual Revolution by Farah Deveau. I love this book. So yeah, I really wanted to read Kate Lister's book, and I've just not gotten around to it yet. So eventually I do need to pick it up, but it is like my like the other two books that I've shown you, it is absolutely massive. So I might have to wait until the paperback comes out, because like as it is, I think the book is only around about 300-400 pages, but it is so big that you could probably like injure somebody if you hit them with it. I don't know. Might wait till the paperback comes out. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I did do a video that was all about my most anticipated releases for the second half of this year. But a book that I actually forgot to mention in that video, and I cannot believe I left it out, is Stephen Fry's Troy. Stephen Fry has already done a couple of books on like ancient Greek myths. I think there's Mythos and Heroes, which I haven't actually read yet, but I really need to get around to. But Troy is obviously going to be his way of retelling the Trojan War, and because I've been in such a Greek myth kick recently, I'm so keen to get to this. I generally really enjoy Stephen Fry just as a person, though I've never read any of his writing, so I'm really interested to see it. But he's such like a clever, funny person, so I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment, and I'm kind of scared to mention what my biggest disappointment was, because this is a book and the first in a series which I know is so beloved, not just on BookTube but by most people. Please don't hate me. Yeah, I read The Northern Lights by Philip Pullman at the beginning of the year, and I didn't really like it. I'm sorry. But the cover is gorgeous. Yay. I'm so sorry, please don't kill me. Yeah. I won't go into it either because I feel like that might make things worse. So moving swiftly on. Question number 6 is biggest surprise, and I have to say the biggest surprise for me this year was Lanny by Max Porter. Once again, I will link I think it's my May wrap up where I go more in detail about my thoughts about Lanny, but it was honestly a book that I was expecting that I wasn't gonna like. I'd heard that it was kind of stream of consciousness, I'd heard that it was a bit experimental, but I was really pleasantly surprised when I read it that it isn't quite as experimental as stream of consciousness as I thought it was. It's just a really beautiful story about like appreciating your day-to-day and appreciating the people around you, like just at its basic, stripped down. And yeah, I really loved it. Question number 7 is favourite new author, either debut or new to you. And for me, I think probably my favourite author was Sophia Thakur, who wrote Somebody Give This Heart a Pen, which is my favourite poetry collection that I've read this year. I just absolutely adored this poetry collection, and it is just beautiful insight into like growing up in the 21st century, particularly as a mixed race woman, navigating the modern world and relationships and friendships and identity. I just thought it was gorgeous. Absolutely stunning, and I recommend that you all read it, please. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I swear every single video that I have seen of the mid-year book freakout tag, everybody has been so dismissive of this question and being like, oh, I would never have a bookish crush. But like, if I'm being really honest, like I did kind of laugh when I saw this question, but like, do I have bookish crushes? Like, not all the time, but yeah, I do. Do I have like a little bit of a crush on Remus Lupin in Harry Potter? Yes. Do I have a little bit of a crush on Finnick Odair in Hunger Games? Yes. Do I have a crush on like most of Jane Austen's men, particularly Mr. Knightley? Yes, I do. So I don't think I have any right to be dismissive of this question. Like, people have book crushes, it's fine. Though for me, I will say it's not something that happens that often. I'd say if anybody from this year, maybe Tom Haywood from The Other Bennet Sister. Like, he was nice, you know, he was a kind of similar to your typical Jane Austen men, so maybe him. Like I say, it's not a thing that happens that often for me, but I acknowledge it does happen. So stop being rude about this question, it's a fun question. Question number 9 is newest favourite character, and I guess this isn't a new character, but it probably is Mary Bennet. I just found her really lovable and lovely to read about in The Other Bennet Sister. Just repeating books for my questions, I guess. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry, and for me it was a reread actually that kind of gave me a little bit of the weepies, and it was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which tells the story of Achilles and Patroclus as they grow up together and become lovers and then go to the Trojan War and die. Sorry, spoiler. But yeah, I cried. It got me. It got me. Following on from a book that made you cry, Question number 11 is a book that made you happy. And I think the book that probably made me the most happy and that it gave me a lot of laughs was Dead Famous, An Unexpected History of Celebrity by Greg Jenner. As I said in my April wrap up about this book, Greg Jenner writes on horrible histories. He also does a podcast called You're Dead to Me, and as you'd probably expect, is a very, very funny writer, and there's so many jokes just peppered throughout this book, and I absolutely loved it. There were so many moments when I was reading this where I just had to like stop what I was doing and just have a little giggle to myself because he's a funny writer. I enjoyed this a lot. Question number 12 is most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year or received. And for me, I think probably the most beautiful book, I think all my books are beautiful, but probably the most beautiful is Miss Austen by Jill Hornby. I feel like it kind of looks quite simple when you look at it, but when you look more closely, it's got like this beautiful embroidered design, which all of these bits are actually raised so you can feel them. When you open it up, the end papers follow that same pattern, but then when you take off the dust jacket, the pattern from the front cover is also on the back as if it has been actually embroidered. Like, isn't that stunning? Like, oh, I just love how much thought went into this in the production design. Yeah, whoever did the design of this needs a raise because it's just so beautiful. It's such a beautifully produced book. Question number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Now, I like to keep my TBR quite low, and I've done quite a good job of that. I always seem to have like 5 or 6 books on my TBR that I just cannot shift. I always seem to buy books before I actually get to them. So I do have about 6 books or so left on my TBR, but probably the one that I definitely need to get to the most is this one, War and Peace by Liv Tolstoy. Chunky boy. I actually got this for my birthday from my friend Lizzie, so thank you, Lizzie, if you're watching. You're not watching this. But yeah, it's a big one. It's quite intimidating, but I do want to try and get this done, especially whilst I'm still in lockdown and I'm not in work, so, you know, I have no excuse to not read this, so it needs to be done. What I'm probably thinking of doing is, like I said, I've got 5 books aside from this that are left on my TBR. Maybe if I read a little bit of War and Peace every single day, by the time I do have no books left aside from this, then it won't be like I've got this massive 1200 page book still to read. Whilst I'm here, I thought I might as well show you the 5 books that I do still have on my TBR, at least at the time of filming, the 5 books that I can't quite shift. I have The Favourite, which is the biography of Sarah, the Duchess of Marlborough by Ophelia Field. This is the biography that the movie The Favourite was based on. The movie with Olivia Colman and Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz. Yeah, need to get to this. I have Perdita, The Life of Mary Robinson by Laura Byrne, which I got out of a charity shop and need to get to. I have East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I have owned this for many a year and still not read it. I have Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zuzak and Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. I hope I did not pronounce that wrong, I'm really sorry. I also did get a couple of treats to myself. One of them is the Tudor fashion book, which I talked about in my Tudor TBR video, which is on its way to me, but I also picked up my baby dressed in the age of Jane Austen. But I do kind of need to make it so that, aside from maybe books that I listen to as audiobook and then decide to buy the physical copy of, that I'm not buying any more books than these ones that I have. I need to get to these first, so we'll see if that happens. But I mean, really, I've just got 8 books on my physical TBR, so it's not terrible. I'm definitely not the worst offender on BookTube for my TBR, so I can be kind of chill about it, but I do know that the 5 books that I mentioned there have been there for a while, and I have just been avoiding them. So I need to get to them, like, hopefully this month. Like, there's no reason I can't read these in the next month or so. So that's it. Those are all of the questions in the mid-year book freakout tag. I'm probably not going to tag anybody to do this because I don't know who's already done it or who's planning on doing it or who wants to do it. But if you do fancy doing it, if you've not done it already, then just say I tagged you. And I'd love to hear what your responses to the questions on this tag are. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you're having a fantastic day and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.